this prabhu who gave the introduction, he read something from the internet, and it said, I joined in Buffalo in 1971. And that's correct. But on September 20th, 1972, I defected from Buffalo, and I came to Toronto. And that was the date of the installation of Kishore Mane. And we installed them at Gerrard Street in Toronto, in a very, very little temple. And the Buffalo Temple had been a terrifically dynamic temple. It was established by one of my godbrothers. His name was Rupanuga Prabhu. And he was one of the original disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And we used to call Rupanuga the lion because he has such a, mood about him. And he was an old man, and we were all young people. We were, just 20 years old. But he was an old man. He was probably at least 27. Maybe he was even 30. He was so old. But he was a great preacher. And he was so dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. He joined in New York. He was a social worker. And at a certain point, Srila Prabhupada asked him to go and preach. So he decided that he would go to Buffalo because Buffalo had a huge student population. And at that time in North America, there was a great revolutionary mood. And I think that the State University of New York at Buffalo was one of the most radical universities in North America. So Rupanuga decided that he would go there and began to preach. And he told me that when he went there, all he had was, I don't even know if we had Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. I don't even know if Prabhupada had printed the Bhagavad Gita yet. And the first Bhagavad Gita was that blue Bhagavad Gita printed by Macmillan. I don't even know if that had been printed, but Rupanuga said he just had Bhagavad Gita, a picture of Prabhupada, and he had his suit that he would wear when he was doing as a social worker. And he rented a room in Buffalo, and this is, back in 1968, 69, and the majority of you people were still in your last lives at that time. It was really different. It was very, very different. Things were very old, and it was another world. So he rented some cheap room that he could afford, so very inexpensive room. And he went to the State University, and he started, and first he went to the administration of the university. And he said, I've come here to teach something wonderful. And they said, what is that? He said, I've come to teach Bhagavad Gita. And he convinced, he was such a powerful person, that he convinced the administration of the university to give him a room in the student union on every Wednesday evening where he would hold a class on Bhagavad Gita, and all of the students who attended the entire semester course, they would get 1 university credit for studying Bhagavad Gita, which was pretty incredible. And so he started preaching, and he would cook a feast. Whatever he'd learned from Prabhupada, he would cook, and he would have a kirtan, give a class on Gita, and then give a feast to the students. from that class that he had, personalities like Kishore Prabhu joined, Kishore Swami joined, Ananda Swami joined, Jagadish Prabhu joined, Bhagavan Prabhu joined, Nartamananda Prabhu joined, Lakshmi Moni Devi Dasi joined, and too many other great people who I've forgotten, they joined. It was very dynamic. And Rupanuga's mood was, you join, and we'll keep you here for 3 months or 6 months, and then you go out and you start a Hare Krishna temple somewhere. He sent Bhagavan to Detroit, open a temple there. And he sent this one here and that one there. And then Rupanuga left to become, when Prabhupada then established the GBC, Rupanuga went back to New York City to become temple president of GBC over there. Rupanuga told me one time that and he was a family man, but he was away from his wife and his young son. They stayed in New York City. And he told me sometimes it would become so difficult, preaching alone. And all he had was that Gita and his picture of Prabhupada. And he said sometimes he would just sit in front of his picture of Prabhupada and he would just cry. And he would pray to Prabhupada, please help me, please help me. You have told us that your Guru Maharaj sent us to assist you. And you told us that we are meant to assist you in serving your Guru Maharaj in spreading Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada, please help me. He said sometimes he'd literally be weeping because it would be so difficult. But Rupanuga Prabhu told me that on different occasions, this picture would come to life and Prabhupada would begin to speak to him. And Prabhupada would encourage him, go on preaching Krishna consciousness, go on preaching. So he left, I guess he left probably late 1970 or maybe early January, something like that, 71. And then I joined in about May, or the very beginning of June of 71. That means how many years now? 52 years? 52 years ago, I walked into the Buffalo Temple one Friday night and I never walked out again. It was different then. It didn't take 5 years of attending the Namahata. There were so many different courses. We just walked in and bang, and that was it. We didn't go. And so I stayed there for about a year and a half. And I was very young. When I came, I was 20. And if any of you young men are 20, or you have all recently been 20, you know how sometimes at 20 the heart becomes restless. So it came time for the installation of Radha Gopinath, and my temple president was Gundagrahi Maharaj. At that time he was Gundagrahi Prabhu. And he said, let's go. Let's drive up to Toronto for the installation. That should be very enlivening. I said, sure. So we drove up, and I can remember standing in the back of that little temple room in Toronto, just staring at Radha Gopinath. And I was saying, Radha Gopinath, please save me. Radha Gopinath, please save me. Radha Gopinath, please save me. That was my only prayer. And then we had terrific prasadam after. And my temple president, he said, now let's drive back down to Buffalo. And I said, do you think that I could stay here for a little while to try to become spiritually enlivened before I came back? He said, sure. And Gunnagrahi Guru, he had a kind heart, about as big as the ocean. He said, sure. He said, if it will help you to improve your devotional spirit, sure you can stay. He said, you can stay for 2 weeks. So I stayed for 2 weeks, and boy, was it wonderful. We had such a fantastic team in the Toronto Temple at that time. It was really amazing, the spirit that was there. And 2 weeks later, I happened to be in the temple president's office, and the phone rang. And we didn't have these phones back then, we had the old-fashioned phones. And so the phone rang, and our temple president picked up the phone. Please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. And then he put his hand over the receiver, and he said, he turned to me, he said, it's Gunnagrahi. He wants you to come back. And I said, please tell Gunnagrahi Prabhu that I feel so enlivened to be here in Toronto. It's very good for my spiritual life. And tell him I would like his permission to stay here. So he told Gunnagrahi Prabhu. And for us people who have been ashram people and have done a lot of seva in the ashram, generally the ashram commanders, the temple presidents, they don't want to lose their men. But Gunnagrahi Prabhu said, if he's happy spiritually, and if he's, developing taste of his Krishna consciousness, I have no objection to these things, which is really, a commendable quality. Not just that I got my personal wish fulfilled, but that just, he cared for me more than, than just having a person who was going to, cook the Sunday feast or scrub the pots or, clean the temple. He cared for me as an individual. And we should be that way amongst one another. We should always care for one another as devotees. We should always be meditating on Srila Prabhupada, who was Chaitanya, on your Guru Maharaj, and on Srila Prabhupada, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya came to this world to share his love and to share his compassion and to show his humanity to everyone. And we should really make that a core principle, because we practice our Krishna consciousness. That we should always, be aware of one another, and we should always be aware of helping one another. So the sum and substance of this story is I defected to Toronto, and Toronto was the longest time that I spent in a temple in North America. I stayed here from 1972 to 1977, and then I defected to another place called Vrindavan. And although I've done seva in other places over the years, my heart was always in Vrindavan, and then gradually, Radhesham came to the point where they allowed me to stay there on a more permanent basis. But those years in Toronto were really amazing. Has anyone here ever seen that little building on Gerard Street? This prabhu has. It's in an area of Toronto. Back then they used to call it Cabbage Town. It was an area that was populated by drunks and bums and poor people and we were there in the middle of it all. And it was buzzing with Krishna consciousness. It was dynamic. It was so full of life. And gradually I became the cook. And I used to cook for all the devotees. I wanted to go in Sankirtan, but because I could cook, they wouldn't let me go in Sankirtan. And I had to stay back in the temple, and I relished it. And I would cook, and I would go out shopping. I would go to the Ontario food terminal, and all the merchants out there, they knew me, and they would give me free boxes of vegetables. And I used to go to a place called Kensington Market. Does it still exist?
Yes.
And one of our devotees, his name is Giri Jadava. And his dad, he owned a shop in Kensington Market. I used to go, get things. He would have, he always sold sort of like second-class vegetables cheap. And I would get, veggies from him. And at the same time, I would have my assistant go inside of his cooler and nick things like mangoes that I could give to Radhagopinath. But it was wonderful days in Toronto, really wonderful days. So I'm sort of the old school Toronto devotee. No, please put down. It's too cold. And His Holiness Bhakti Marg Maharaj joined at that time, and it was wonderful. You had great kirtans, you had great prasad, you had great deity worship. Toronto was a super center for Krishna consciousness. And I don't know how many of you young people are connected, to Toronto Temple. Who here is connected? Fantastic. So in the same way that, when I was 20, when I was just a kid, I joined and then, dedicated my life to the seva of Srila Prabhupada and participated in that era of the development of ISKCON. You young people should do the same thing. All of you people who are connected, somehow or other, find your place where you can do seva. And if you're initiated, then you become more qualified so you can engage in deity worship. And participate in the temple activities because, and today we went to Indresh Gore's house, and he was taking us upstairs so we could see that sofa that Srila Prabhupada sat on at his house. Indresh was only 3 or 4 at that time. He looked a lot different than he does now. And Prabhupada went to their house in 75 and 76. And when we were going upstairs, they had a selection of pictures of Prabhupada's visit at that time. And we were looking at the pictures, and I said, ooh, who is that young boy in the picture? And it was me. So really, you young folks, you should take it seriously. And I know it's 50 years later, and I know that people think in a totally different way now. People have, different educational goals, and people have different aspirations, and people have their jobs, and people want to make money, they want to do all these different things. But if you read Prabhupada's books, and if you read Bhagavatam, you'll know that in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, there's the Rasvayakam Samvaro Dharmo Yato Bhaktiya Bhaksajay Ahaytrikiya Pratiyataki Nesutta Siviti, where Sutta Goswami, he tells the sages in Anushranya that the Paro Dharma, or the highest Dharma, that we all must perform in human society is the devotional service of Krishna. And then he explains that devotional, for it to be pure devotional service, it has to be qualified in different ways. He says it should be, you should serve without any strings attached, and you should serve all the time in an unbroken way. And then he guarantees that if you perform bhakti in that way, that will thrill your soul more than any other activity that you could ever even conceive of engaging in this life. The greatest pleasure that you will experience will come from bhakti. So we have the dharmas of this world, and that's understandable. You parents here, you have your dharma as being parents. Husbands have their dharma of being husbands, wives have the dharma of being wives. Sons and daughters have their duty to their parents, and we have duties to society. But the paro dharma always is Jito Bhakti is to, we can keep one eye on this world, but always keep the other eye focused on the world of Krishna's devotional service. And if you look back and you look at that generation of, crazy monkeys 50 years ago, and read the history, although we had no qualification except the mercy of our spiritual master, 243 Avenue Road was acquired. How is it that people without any education, no jobs, somehow or other, acquired such a property? And it's just because we had so much faith in the order of our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. When we were at Indresh Gore's house today, I saw a copy, maybe a copy or the original, sales document. That was 1976. Temple cost $400,000. Where are these young people going to come up with $400,000? But because Prabhupada wanted it, we ran, and we collected, pennies and dimes and nickels, and we worked 24 hours a day, somehow or other, by hook or by crook. When Prabhupada came in '75, and he was at the temple in Cabbage Town, he said, "We need a new temple." And they showed him the church. And Prabhupada said, if you get this place, it will be a great victory over Maya. And so they went through the estate agents and they went to the church and they, our temple presidents or the devotees who were negotiating, they offered, exactly what the church wanted. And they said, no, we have another person who is interested. And they wouldn't accept the offer. And then later in Dinesh Kaur's father, Subhavilas, he went there and he said, I represent the Indian community. We would like to make an Indian cultural center. Will you sell this place to us? And they said, sure, no problem. And in the course of negotiations, Subhavilas said, I heard that these Hare Krishna people, they wanted to buy this place. And the pastor said, yes, but we'd rather burn the church down before we sell it to the Hare Krishnas. And so all the negotiations were done very incognito. And on the day of handing over the keys, Subhavilas Prabhu went, and our then temple president went. But our then temple president, he was so exhausted from so many days of, finally getting the funds together and this and that and the other, and not sleeping. He was sort of off his head. And so he wanted to go also. So he had a suit, he put on this suit. And back then it was against the law for us to grow our hair out. So we used to wear wigs. And he put his wig on and his wig was like sideways. And the strangest thing is he forgot to take off his tilak. And he walked in the temple along with Subhavilas, and Subhavilas went. And then the pastor, he looked up and he said, oh my God. We sold the church to the Hare Krishnas. And then later he wrote a letter and he apologized. He said that was a very un-Christian thing of him to say. And then the work began. And by December of '76, we moved in. And nobody in that area knew that the Hare Krishnas were moving in the temple. We were all like wearing our pants and shirts and our wigs, and it was winter time. We had our caps on, building altars, transferring everything from Gerard Street, and Radha Gopinath came to Avenue Road. And when the neighbors found out, they went crazy. They thought that, oh my God, we're like radioactive men from the moon. And they said our property values are going to dive now because these people had moved in. And they wanted us out so seriously. They used to send the police at Mangalarti. They used to say they're making so much noise. And every day before Mangalarti, we would go outside because there were practically 75, 100 of us living in the temple. I mean, it was different than it is now. And big kirtans. Every day before Mangalarti, we would go out and somebody would like check around the block to see if there were any police. They would put up sound monitors to see if the volume was above certain decibels. And if the police were out there, it was like, whispering, chanting like mad, dancing like mad. And when we went to Mayapur that year, on the first day of the festival, Srila Prabhupada was walking down the stairs and he saw the temple president And Prabhupada just got this smile from one ear to the other ear. Huge smile. If he had smiled anymore, he would have torn his face. And Srila Prabhupada, he looked at the temple president and he said, "So, you have gotten the temple." And the temple president told him the whole story and told him how the neighbors didn't like us and how the neighbors didn't like our noise and how the police would come. And the Prabhupada was listening, he was like, his eyes were big and he had a big smile. He was like a little boy hearing a fantastic story. And when the temple president finished, we were waiting for Prabhupada to comment, and Prabhupada, he smiled and he said, "Yes, we are a very noisy religion." So, we monkeys could do stuff like that. And you young people, you can do much more than that. All of you have probably much more academic qualification than we ever had. All of you have probably specialized in different lines of education or profession. So one way or another, all of you should connect yourself to the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Is that right, Ananda? Connect to the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one way or another. And because nature works in a quite systematic way, correct? It's like seasons change at the correct time, and flowers come at the same time, and winter comes at the same time. But nature is pretty consistent by Krishna's guidance, under Krishna's control. And so if nature continues working consistently, one thing about nature is that the old generally go before the young. And then the young survive for some time until they become old and then they go, correct? So as Prabhupada used to tell us, we can rightfully say to you all that our generation is not going to be here forever, because we've all entered into the zone. The zone meaning, we're all of us now. We're in the departure lounge of the airport. We're just waiting for our flight to get called. In that age of life. And so, all of you should get yourself very seriously dedicated, so that when this generation goes, you all will be dedicated and qualified and competent, that you can continue the mission of Krishna consciousness. And if you get married, and most of you will get married, and your children will come, train your children to become Krishna conscious. So that when you grow old and you're going to be sitting in the departure lounge of the airport, and you know that your children will be very nicely trained so that they can step up to the bat and make sure that Mahaprabhu's mission, Mahaprabhu's love, Mahaprabhu's compassion, Mahaprabhu's humanity will continue to spread to everyone, each and every person. And we may have a festival here in Toronto, And I don't know how many people come for your Rath Yatra. I don't know if that's your biggest festival, if you have bigger festivals. But maybe 1,000 people, 2,000 people, 3,000 people, you know, so many thousands of people, maybe for one day. But what is the population of Canada? And we can't rest, you know, until each and every person has the opportunity to chant Hare Krishna. Each and every person has the opportunity to systematically learn the science of Bhagavad Gita. So each and every person has the opportunity to taste the nectar of Krishna consciousness through studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the responsibility that's coming on your shoulder. It came on our shoulders when we were young monkeys, and it's coming on your shoulder. You're young, but you're not monkeys like we were. You know, you have nice qualifications. And I think the majority of people here are from Indian community. That means that you have good culture. That means that you understand what Dharma is. And so you should take advantage of that. You're blessed, but you should take your blessings and you should use your blessings nicely. Committing yourself to Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu said, Yadi Neki Tadikaha Krishna Upadesh, Amara Agnaya Guru Taraha Edesh. That everybody that you see and everybody that you speak to, you give them Krishna's instructions. And this way, Amara Agnaya Guru Taraha Edesh. On my order, Mahaprabhu said, Amara Agnaya. You become spiritual master and save everyone in your land. And you'll be surprised that Prabhupada used to just repeatedly tell us that in classes when we were 20 years old. And we would say, well, that's, you know, Amara Agnaya Guru, it will never happen to me. But it happened. And it will happen to you also. But be very serious in your focus. One eye on the dharmas of this world, one eye always fixed on Paro Dharma, which is the devotional service of Sri Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. And as we say in our English language, have you got it? Have you got it? You must get it. And you must do it. Okay. So we will chant some. And I think we came for chanting. You didn't come from a lecture, but I couldn't control my tongue, so you'll forgive me. Everybody knows, but for the purpose of trying to be a proper person instead of just a egocentric person, I'd like to introduce my team, although you know my team. This is Akinchan Krishna, prabhu. Although he took birth in America. The body is America, what's inside is something else. He's a cultured European gentleman. His parents are from Europe, and if you associate with Akinchan, you can see how gentlemanly he is in all of his dealings, and he's been living in Ananda for a long time. And from the very exotic land of Vancouver, Canada, we have Ananda Murti and commonly known as the Bhakti Brothers. Follow them on Instagram, follow them on YouTube. They do training, physical training. If you follow their good guidance, you can get shredded very slow. Well, it's late, and we won't go too long with chanting. We'll be chanting tomorrow night in the Toronto Temple, and we will try to be timely. We can spend more time. We'll just chant for about a half hour or 40 minutes tonight. And Hare Krishna. Oh, no. Everybody together. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi, Vaschachadi Sutarine, Om Agyantimirandasya, Jnanamurtaya, Chakshuram Militam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatiranyata, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhuka Evacha, Patikanam Bhavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jai. Jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Kishore Mane, thank you very much for having us in your home this evening to chanting Hare Krishna. Thank you to all of the relatives who have come from India to participate in chanting and dancing. Thanks to all of the young people who are going to take the responsibility to spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. It may sound a little bit funny to you that you're going to do that. It really sounded funny to us that we were going to do that. But we got the order, so we did it. And the same way our generation did it, the next generation did it, the next generation did it, your generation, you have to do it. All of you youngsters, you've got another, maybe you're 20, 25, 30, you have another 50 years in this world to do a lot of seva to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.